She will not be able to walk, to talk, or to eat by herself. Imagine a 24/7 diet of soup. Forget ever being empty nesters. These are some things that were said about me shortly after I was born and diagnosed with cerebral palsy. These assumptions are false. Cerebral palsy does not always cause mental impairments, and depending on the type and the severity of this disorder, it is very common to live an independent life. Please follow me along today as I explain to you cerebral palsy, commonly known as CP. Cerebral palsy, the CDC says that it affects 1 in every 345 school-age children. Every 20 seconds, a child is diagnosed with this disorder, the most common form of motor disability. That means that at least some point in your life, you have come in contact with someone with this disorder, and the number is slowly rising. CP is a neurological disorder that occurs usually before birth or slightly after birth. It deals with different parts of the brain that affects balance, mobility, and posture, and sometimes mental impairments. There are 3 types of cerebral palsy. Spastic cerebral palsy, which is the one I have. It is the most common and it affects 75 to 85% of people with this disorder. The Cerebral Palsy Alliance states that cerebral palsy, CP, relates to stiff muscles and in turn can cause jerky movements. It also means that moving from one position to another is very difficult. The second form of cerebral palsy is known as dyskinesia, and in the cerebral palsy community, all the kids call it DI. Dyskinesia deals with involuntary movements. It affects every single person differently. Some have twisty movements, some have slow movements, as the Cerebral Palsy Alliance states. The least common form of cerebral palsy is called ataxic CP, which literally means without order. Ataxic is not the most common because it is so hard to diagnose. It is usually misdiagnosed as spastic CP because it deals with jerky movements, just like spasticity, that appear in the muscle movements of the arms. So I'm sure all of this just sounds like a bunch of jumbled words to you, much like the neurons misfiring in my head. So let's put it into practice, shall we? Spastic, dyskinesia, and ataxic. They're just a bunch of names that sound like they're from a giant bowl of alphabet soup. Let's do some spelling. So first up, on the 3rd page of our PowerPoint, each disorder of cerebral palsy affects a person differently, much like our taste buds and the things that we crave. So spasticity is caused by the motor cortex on baby doll, and this controls the flexibility in your wrists and your legs. It also causes issues of doing normal everyday functions, tying your hair, brushing your teeth, putting on your shoes, and walking and running. The second form of cerebral palsy is dyskinesia. This is caused by an injury to the basal ganglia, which is right above, right here. And this is the powerhouse of the body. It sends messages to movements. And dyskinesia is a focal point or all over the body. The third is ataxic, and it deals with the cerebellum, which is the control center of balance. And it varies from person to person. And with the ataxic person, they deal with wide hip movements, so they can't open their hips very wide. It causes clumsy and fidgetiness. So some aids to help with all of these disorders is, let me tell you. So now that you know how to potentially spot someone with cerebral palsy, let's look at the 4 aids, because remember, there is no treatment for this disorder. There's only ways to help. So the most common form of helping someone with cerebral palsy is water aerobics, swimming, floating with pool assistance. It allows the body to relax, to allow the muscles to be weightless. The second form of AIDS, of treatment, is wheelchairs or AFOs, known as orthopedic braces. Wheelchairs are there to help someone make it easier walking from point A to point B. People with cerebral palsy get very tired very easily. These usually coincide with someone that has ataxic or spastic cerebral palsy. The third and final aid of cerebral palsy is therapeutic horseback riding. This aid helps with hip openers for ataxic people, so those with wide hip gaits, and motor issues that deal with dyskinesia and spastic cerebral palsy. This way, they can work on their hand movements and their balance on a horse, and these are just some things. So thank you so much for following along with me as I explained how a jumbled bunch of letters makes up my life and countless lives of those you have probably encountered. I can stand, walk, and even live on my own. I might be a bit slower because of my cerebral palsy, and the types do not define me. Thank you very much.